So, this should come as a surprise to absolutely no one that Ron DeSantis gave a anecdote that turns out to be bullshit. Unfortunately, in this case, the person who he was referencing also believes the bullshit. Which, why should she? I do not know. Anyway, let's get to the article, and hopefully my ramblings will make sense. So, when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was asked during last week's GOP presidential debate whether he would support nationwide abortion restrictions, he instead offered a startling anecdote. Because, of course, we don't want to just answer questions directly. I know a lady in Florida named Penny, he said. Sure he does. She survived multiple abortion attempts. Sure she did. She was left discarded in a pan. Fortunately, her grandmother saved her and brought her to a different hospital. I'm sorry, my bullshit meter just went off so hard. He offered no other details, and the debate moderators moved on. Of course they did, because we don't want to, check if your narrative, if a story supporting your narrative might be false or not. But according to news reports, doctors who reviewed her case and an interview with the woman, the story is far more complicated than DeSantis made it sound. First off, of course it did. The debaters have practically enough time to open their mouths to breathe, rather than just be able to go into depth in answering a question. Even if that in-depth turns out to be a bunch of bullshit, you really don't have a lot of time to go into a lot of depth into your answers. It dates to 1955, a vastly different time both medically and socially. Abortion was largely illegal. Largely? Including in Florida. Contraception options were few, and babies born at an extremely early gestational age were not expected to survive. Anti-abortion groups often use stories like this to argue against abortion. Can't imagine why. DeSantis has also frequently criticized abortions later in pregnancy on the campaign trail as he seeks to court GOP primary voters. Decades later, there's little way to verify the details of what exactly happened. That raises questions about the story's relevance to the nation's ongoing battle over abortion rights, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year, and debates over abortions later in pregnancy, especially when experts say such procedures are exceedingly rare and often involve severe complications. The woman is 67-year-old Miriam Penny Hopper, a Florida resident who has been told that she survived multiple abortion attempts when she was in the womb, because that's totally a thing. The first, she said in an interview, was by her parents at home, and the second by a local doctor who instructed a nurse to discard her in a bedpan after inducing her birth at just 23 weeks gestation. Hopper said she learned through her father that her parents tried to end the pregnancy at home. There were complications and they went to the hospital. As the story goes, the doctors did not hear a heartbeat, gave her a shot, and instructed the nurse to discard the baby dead or alive. Okay, first off, is her father and mother still together? Because maybe the father wanted an abortion and misremembers something, or he wants to sock it to her mother. There's so many questions as to why he would tell her this. Especially as you will find out, it makes zero sense. Hopper said she was born and made a squeaky noise but was put on the back porch of the hospital. She said her grandmother discovered her there alive the following day, wrapped in a towel, and she was rushed to another hospital. Hopper was told she stayed there for 3.5 months and survived with the help of an incubator. Nurses nicknamed her Penny because of her copper red hair. My parents had always told me all my life, "You're a miracle to be alive," she said. So it sounds like they both wanted her. So it sounds like they're still together. So maybe the father's just horribly confused. Or he's anti-abortion and is just feeding his daughter bullshit, so she would be anti-abortion too. Hopper has used her story to partner with anti-abortion organizations nationwide. Yeah, there's a shock. But doctors who reviewed the story said her birth did not appear to be an attempted abortion and questioned the accuracy of the presumed gestational age. When Hopper was born in the 1950s, before major advances in care for premature infants, babies born at 23 weeks would have had a very little chance of surviving. Even into the early parts of this century, the generally accepted edge of viability remained around 24 weeks. A pregnancy is considered full term at 39 to 40 weeks. Several OBGYNs said it appears the case was treated as a stillbirth after a doctor was not able to detect a heartbeat. That makes sense. Because the fetus was presumed dead, the procedure performed in the hospital would not be considered an abortion, said Leila Zahedi Sprung, a maternal fetal medicine physician in Colorado. A newspaper article documenting Hopper's miraculous recovery in 1956, the year after her birth, also complicates the tale. The story in the Lakeland Ledger says doctors at a hospital in Wauchula put forth greater efforts in keeping the 1-pound, 11-ounce baby alive before she was escorted by police to a larger hospital. She was admitted and placed in an incubator. It sounds very much like they anticipated a stillbirth, and when she came out alive, they resuscitated that baby to the best of their abilities and then shipped her off to where she needed to be, Zahedi Sprung said. Another news article from the Tampa Tribune said doctors advised incubation, which was not available at Wauchula, leading to her transfer. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Hopper disputes that doctors initially tried to save her. How the hell would you know? I don't think there was any effort really put forth. How would you know this? You were literally just born. And obviously, at the very best interpretation is your father was horribly confused. OBGYNs who reviewed the details also raised questions about Hopper's gestational age at birth, saying her recorded birth weight more likely matches a fetus several weeks further along, around 26 or 27 weeks. They said the lungs are not developed enough to breathe at 23 weeks without intense assistance, making it improbable such an infant could survive abandonment for hours outdoors. Pregnancies were very difficult to accurately date in 1955 before ultrasounds were used for medical purposes, said Mary Jane Minklin, a gynecologist at the Yale University School of Medicine. Hopper acknowledged that there's little documentation about her birth aside from the newspaper clippings. Her parents have died, and the county would not share her birth records. Interesting. I thought because it's her records she would have access to them, but okay. She confirmed she was the person DeSantis was referring to, but would not say whether she's met or spoken with the governor. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to mudsling in politics, she said. The story is about abortion and surviving abortion. But you didn't survive an abortion, you twat. Scrutiny on DeSantis' debate anecdote comes at a time when he is struggling to maintain his distant second-place stature in the Republican nominating contest. He has promoted his staunch opposition to abortion to curry favor with conservative voters, although he avoided a direct answer when asked at the debate if he favors a national ban on abortions at 6 weeks of pregnancy. He signed such legislation earlier this year in Florida. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, yes, he would. We're better than what the Democrats are selling. Prove it. DeSantis said on stage during the Fox News debate, "We are not going to allow abortion all the way up till birth, and we will hold them accountable for their extremism." And who the hell said that you can have abortions all the way up until birth? Oh, yes, that is a fantasy made up in your mind so you have a really easy straw man to destroy. The DeSantis campaign did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Well, there's a surprise. Medical experts generally say the idea of abortion up to birth is misleading. No shit. They say termination later in pregnancies are rare, very rare, and typically involve medication that induces birth early, which is different from a surgical abortion. No shit. They typically happen only if the fetus has a low probability of survival, experts say. In 2020, less than 1% of abortions in the U.S. were performed at or after 21 weeks of pregnancy, according to data from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Especially with improvements in medical technology, the likelihood of an infant being born alive after an abortion is slim to none, says Mary Ziegler, law professor at the University of California, Davis School of Law, and a leading historian on the abortion debate. But such stories continue to resonate. Similar abortion survivor anecdotes have been used by anti-abortion groups during legislative debates over so-called born alive measures. Those measures require doctors to give life-sustaining care in the extremely rare case an infant is born alive after an attempted abortion. Proponents of expanded access to abortion also promote stories that pack an emotional punch, especially since the Supreme Court overturned constitutional protections for the procedure. Women have been forced to carry babies with fatal fetal anomalies to term or have been turned away from hospitals and had to go out of state for abortions. Those stories are more relevant to the current abortion debate, says Mark Heron, senior counsel for the Center for Reproductive Rights, a national group that advocates for abortion access. This is happening right now, not a story from 50 years ago that has absolutely nothing to do with abortion today. So that is the end of that article, and, I feel sorry for that woman that it sounds like she honestly believes that the bullshit that was fed to her. And that's a shame because there's no evidence to suggest that such a thing happened. Like I said, either the father was horribly confused, maybe he saw that his wife was, I don't know, either going into labor, having early labor pains, or or maybe she felt like she was having a miscarriage. And so, I'm just guessing here. I'm just spitballing. I really have no concept. And so the father knows that miscarriage is also called. And maybe she used the term, "I'm having a spontaneous abortion," which is the term used for a miscarriage. So maybe he either misremembered when he was telling his daughter this, or in his very simple mind, he just heard abortion and thought his wife tried to have an abortion right then, there in the home, as opposed to she thought she was having a miscarriage. So they got to the hospital and the doctor didn't hear a heartbeat. So there was a stillbirth. So maybe the father took that to mean that what wasn't accomplished at home got accomplished at the hospital. I mean, I've met people who are so easily confused about what is happening around them. So it's entirely possible he completely misunderstood everything that was happening in that moment. And so he then yapped to the press, and then the press came up with a story as well, and things just snowballed from there. Who knows? We don't know the facts. We can't speak to the father because he's probably been long dead. I mean, if she was born in the 50s. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, yeah, the father was at best horribly confused as to what was happening to his wife and to his daughter. Completely confused, and between that confusion and time, he got everything all jumbled together and told his daughter a bunch of bullshit, and to this day she believes that bullshit and refuses to accept that maybe her father didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And she said she heard this from her father. I'm surprised she didn't hear anything from her mother. So maybe I'm right. Maybe they got divorced at some point. And maybe she never was close to her mother. And her father poisoned her mind to make it seem like her mother didn't want her or something. I don't know. But the more charitable way to read this is that the father was horribly confused. The daughter refuses to accept that her father could have been horribly confused about what he was telling her and believes what he told her. And Ron DeSantis is trying to use this to score political points. Because he's trying to make things out to be something that they're not. And trying to scare people. You know, let's create pearl clutchers where there weren't any before. But based on what I'm seeing on the polls, it ain't helping him. So at least we have that going. So that is all I have on this article. And I will see you guys in the next one.